You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back. It is Friday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's going on in these lovely volatility markets? Well, let's find out together, shall we? It is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. If I sound a little bit different this week, it's because I'm coming to you from the Southern studio. Yes, I'm down here in the Southeast to attend the Futures Industry Association Conference. And I've been hanging around to do a few things afterwards. But you know what? Nothing can derail us from the start of a little bit of vol viewing. We will be back in the studio next week for your usual allotment of shows. But remember, if you want more fun, if you want to join us for the after party, that is Options Oddities, the after party to vol views, only one place to go. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. is the place to go to join us there in the chat. Have a great time. Get two, not one, but two extra shows in your ear holes. And, of course, access to your own pro podcast feed, as well as giveaways and a whole bunch of other fun. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Don't let your broadcast week end with Volatility Views. And as we're talking about broadcasting, who's joining us today for the non-stop vol party? That is Vol Views. First, we go out to the hinterlands of Chicago, where listeners, he is fighting out from underneath. Is it COVID? Is it bubonic plague? Is it Hantavirus? We don't know. But nonetheless, the one, the only Dr. VIX joining us here today, but under the weather. Mr. Dr. VIX, welcome back to the show. Can you survive the full program, sir?
Power through, and then next week is actually spring break for us Hoosiers, so I've got all of spring break to recover, and at my age, maybe I can do it.
Is it a coincidence that down in Indiana, the mecca of basketball, that break pretty much coincides with March Madness? Is that an accident? I think not, sir.
Oh, no, you know what? Sitting on the couch and watching some basketball today is something that I deserve. I do want to throw a Hoosier basketball trivia out there at some point, but let's move forward with with the formal stuff as we go ahead.
It is not the Hoosier review. That will come later on.
I know. Later on. I'm gonna work one little factoid in there, but I'll let you. I'll give you control back now.
We all wait with bated breath as we are also joined by a Villanovan. I say that because I was forced to watch the UConn Villanova game in the Big East tournament last night. None other than the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. I could tell by your tone, sir, you did not enjoy the outcome.
No, I did not. Now, you're a native Connecticut, aren't
I
you?
am a native nutmegger, yes, even though I did not go to UConn, but a large portion of my family did. So
Yeah, so you're obviously in a better mood than me today. Congrats on the win, and at least we're gonna fire our coach and get a new one. That's the lone bright spot from that loss yesterday.
yes, and the lone bright spot of this show, listeners, is the volatility review. So let's get to it.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Volatility Review, the portion of the show where we go wild. We break down the week that was and indeed still is from vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity, all sorts of fun perspectives. And man, wild is the key word for this week, listeners. It was and indeed still is a pretty wild week. I just go away for a few days to attend a conference and bam, the market breaks in my absence. Vol skyrockets out of control and then coming right back down as we're ending the week here after a week that saw a lot of blood red on the screen and, spoiler alert, a lot of volume in the vol complex. We are starting to see, at least for right now, we all know with these markets, you wait 5 minutes, you get something entirely different. But right now, we are seeing the bulls firmly having the bit in their teeth after a week where they just got kicked to the curb repeatedly, session after session, kicking off the week. The tariffs coming in, just spooking the heck out of everybody. Market selling off and not rebounding. We saw a similar MO playing out on Tuesday. It was all whip, no saw earlier in the week for the markets. Later on in the week, we saw a little bit of vacillation, and then today we are seeing the other leg up. S&P getting crushed all the way down to right around 5,500 this week before rebounding. It's up over 100 handles today, listeners, as we're kicking off the show. Right around 56 and a quarter in the S&P. That puts it up nearly 2%, about 1.9%. Our old pal, the Dow, also after having been taken to the woodshed all week long, roaring back 1.6%. Now, they're still all down for the week. That shows you what a blood red week it was. But they are clawing a good chunk of it back today. A NASDAQ leading the charge, as it is wont to do, up to almost 2.5%, about 2.45% in NASDAQ land. And our old pal VIX Cash has been vacillating between 22.5 and 22.25 for the better part of this morning. It was right around 22.5 when we kicked off the show. That puts it down about exactly 2.5 points from where it was this time last week. It looks like it's going back down to about 22.25, which again would put it down to about 2.75 points from last week. Now, we did obviously get a lot higher in between episodes. We got up to almost a 30 this week, 29.1. That'll get us firmly into logins territory, though I know all of you who are waiting with bated breath for a dose of the logins. 22.5 ain't going to cut it, listeners. We have to maintain some sort of integrity with the logins. We can't just do it willy-nilly week after week. VOLI, the old Just the Facts Ma'am edition, straight at the money vol from our friend over there, Mr. Nations. 19.75 when we kicked off the show. Puts it off over a point, about 1.5 points. That one also got rocketing earlier this week, up to almost 25, about a 24.90 was its high during the week. And our old pal VVIX, the vol of vol itself, back down from its lofty perch earlier this week. Of course, back down from where it was on the show last week as well. It was at about a 118 on the show last week, 102 as we kicked off the show today. So obviously puts it down 16 points on the week. Intra-week, it got a lot frothier, got up to almost 138, about 137.5. So things were looking spicy in the vol realm earlier this week. All right, a lot to unpack. Let's go around the horn. The opposite of the way we started. Let's go out to the land of the Southern Volatility Mecca. Mr. Meatball, we all did a lot of vol living this week, sir. What caught your eye?
Yeah, right on Wednesday, when we caught that little bit first Green Day in a while, although we gave some of it away, you saw the VIX start to kind of soften up. Then, and then on Thursday, when we had a pretty decent sized sell off, right? We were up, they turned it around, dumped it. We at one point were threatening 5,500. VIX didn't really wake up with it. And then today we're up and they're coming for volatility yet again. Feels like we got this sell off. It hit that correction territory. People decided the selling was a little bit long in the tooth, and now you've got a little bit of the starts of some dip buying. But we'll see if there's follow through to it. A lot of these big names have had a total reset in valuation. Are they going to buy them up and bring them right back to those kind of lofty PEs, or is this going to be a slow process? That's kind of the question at hand now.
Well, the question in hand in our chat, Mr. Dr. Vix, they are convinced you do have Hantavirus. So, A, can you confirm to our chat that you do or do not have Hantavirus? Hantavirus very much in the headlines of late for bad reasons. And then B, what was catching your eye in a pretty wild week on the vol spacer?
Yeah, kind of similar situation, right? We, sorry.
Maybe you have Hantavirus too. It's okay. You guys, it's a safe space if you guys want to talk about it. But Mr. Dr. Vix, sir, first off, can you confirm your status?
I don't have Hantavirus. Mark Sebastian, I'm here for you anytime you'd like to talk about health issues. I'm here for you. I love it, Hantavirus.
I appreciate that.
I keep leaning toward Rocky Mountain spotted fever because I got a flea bite or a tick bite or something. So that's where I'm going with it. Stopped off at a gas station in the middle of Indiana and got bit by the wrong bug. That's what I think happened to me. Throughout the week, I felt like that the way that the March future was behaving and kind of holding up fairly well, it just gave me a feeling that we would experience volatility throughout the week, and we wouldn't have that pattern that we've had most weeks in recent history, where we've got lots of volatility on Monday, stock market sells off, and then by the end of the week we're back to some normalcy. Of course, we broke with that last week, and needless to say, this week's been extremely volatile, but it's been a great week where for me to tout, don't just watch VIX versus the SPX, watch VIX versus the front month futures, because the front month futures, if they're right there in line with VIX, then we may have some more upside for volatility. But when you can see when the traders believe that whatever move to the upside in volatility that we're experiencing, when they think it's coming to an end, doesn't mean they're always right. But going with the consensus, especially in something that's mean reverting like VIX instruments, at least knowing where the consensus at makes an awful lot of sense.
And Mr. Dr. Vix, a lot of our guests of late have been, I think, fair to put it, skeptical of this market. But you've been outright short. What were you up to this week? Were you closing any shorts? Were you doubling down, riding it all? What were you up to?
The only thing I really did this, actually, I've got a new strategy that's SPX oriented that I've been really focused on. But I've maintained my short futures, and I was kind of light on the long SVIX. I still haven't fully added back. I'm still not 100% long SVIX. I've had too many times in my career where the trend where I've gotten shaken out when we get bounces like we're looking at today, and I'm gonna stick it out for a while. I don't think we're done. How's that?
Yeah, doesn't sound like it, sir.
It's not like Donald Trump changed who he was in the last 24 hours, so I'm not changing my positions. And how's that?
That's exactly what our chat is pointing out right now. We're kind of getting the Trump incarnation now that a lot of people expected the first time, right? They expected him to come roaring out of the gate and just bring all the vol, and instead it was completely the opposite, and he killed all the vol. And it's like this time he is making up for lost time. He's like, you want to see something? Here we go. But let's see what we're seeing out here on the vol surface this week, listeners. And as you might imagine, things got a little topsy-turvy earlier in the week, settling out a little bit out there today as we kicked off the show That March future was actually at a 22 even, 22 exactly, not 22.01, not 21.99, exactly 22 when we took our snapshot there at the start of the show list. That puts it down almost half a point, about 0.4 of a point. April future still feeling a little bit of spice, a little bit of froth, 21.30. That actually puts it up about 0.15 on the week. Obviously, we've been talking for a while about the interesting flat nature of what we saw out there in the curve. We do have a lot of that out there today, even though we do get a little bit of a kick up out there in the tail end of the curve out there around the November, December timeframe where we see a little bit of a tick up, but the rest of the curve is hanging out right around 2080 pretty much all the way out to November. So it's kind of weirdly flat yet again. Mr. Meatball, sir, what is catching your eye out there on the vol surface this week?
Yeah, we were really, really backward earlier in the week. We've stayed in backwardation, but the curve and the VIX itself have completely rolled over. VIX and the March future are basically on top of each other, and VIX is now barely trading at a premium even to April. If we continue along this path, we're going to be a flat curve Monday or Tuesday, and potentially in contango by the time we meet next week.
Yeah, see some of that vol juice maybe come off the board. That could be interesting. Some of today's VIX action might be leaning that way. Spoiler alert, Mr. Meatball, Mr. Dr. VIX, aka Mr. Hantavirus. Same question for you, sir. What is catching your eye? I've got Hantavirus on the brain now. I can't escape it. I blame our chatters there. What is catching your eye, and what was catching your eye on the vol surface this week, sir?
March was pretty elevated relative to the spot for a good portion of the week. I know next week is settlement, correct? That's one of those I'm 99% sure as I say that out loud, but you guys, Hantavirus, it messes with your brain. And as far as the flatness in the curve goes, I've always felt like that was a great indicator of uncertainty. In all of the, now that I'm on spring break, I've got extra time to work on all these quantitative things that pop into my mind. I need to do something where I take the curve and I figure out when, the majority of the curve is in a 1 point range. Do we have excess volatility over the next 20 days or whatever? Because it feels that way from years of watching this thing. So coming into the week next week, if we're kind of flat, I'd say I would be comfortable with that, because that typically is an indication of a lot of uncertainty out there. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, people are less willing to buy dips on the stock market, and that keeps volatility elevated. So we'll see.
Did we lose Mark?
You know what?
Yeah, I think
I'm back. I was muted. Southern
okay,
Studio,
no, sorry,
all these buttons.
I was getting ready to flip. I was going to flip a coin with Mark Sebastian over. Okay, who's in charge?
I said some amazingly impressive stuff, sir, and now it's all gone into the ether. Let's see if I can recapture it. All right, listeners, let's get out to the land of the VIX. And you know what, listeners, if the number of the beast is any indication, then we are maybe in store for a wild day. 666,000 contracts. That is exactly how many are on the tape right now in VIX land. The ADV also popping hard this week, as you might imagine, with the blood red week out there on the old screens. The ADV in VIX land roaring back to life, up nearly 200,000 contracts a day right now, 192,000 contracts a day. That gets us up to about 1.1 million contracts a day. That's a spicy meatball. It's going to be hard to maintain, but if we keep up this tariff madness for the foreseeable future, we could easily be hanging out north of 1 million contracts a day in VIX for the foreseeable future. Again, today, we got the number of the beast. We got Hantavirus. We got an airy show lurking today, listeners. Let's see what's lurking out here in the top 10 of VIX options, shall we? If you're saying to yourself, you know what? We're coming back down the other side of this cliff. Maybe it's time to load up on some puts. I expect to see puts all over the place in our top 10. Well, the answer is decidedly no, listeners. But we do have two puts for you in our top 10. Let's see if we could find where Waldo and his brother are hanging out this week. Number 10 cost you 206,000 contracts. to break into the top 10 in VIX land this week. That's not nothing. That's a decent chunk of change. That gets you to the March 25s. That strike looks a lot more reasonable now than it did, let's say, a couple of weeks ago. Number 9, right back at it, 210,000 of the April 75s. These have never been reasonable, but somewhat interesting nonetheless. Number 8, 211,000 of the April 15 puts. Can we get back to a 15 handle by April expiration, listeners? I don't know. That could be interesting. Nonetheless, number 8, 211,000 of those bad boys. Number 7, 222,000 of the May 75. So you know what? If you said April, I like the 75 strike, but April, not enough duration for me. Here you go. Number 7 is your Huckleberry May 75s. 222,000 of those bad boys. Number 6, 223,000 of the April 42 halves. So we are right back at all the fun, listeners. Number 5, 236,000 of the April 40s. Number 4, 240,000 of the, I take it back. I lied this week. I lied to you folks, listeners, and I apologize. There are actually 3 puts in the top 10. So our proprietary VIX top 10 indicator TM now stands at a shocking and appalling 7-3 calls over puts. So Waldo and his brother and his cousin, number 4, we have the March 19 puts, listeners, 240,000 of those bad boys. Number 3 is Waldo's other brother. It is the March 17 puts, 269,000 of those bad boys. The rest, all calls all the time, as we have come to expect. Number 2, 300K exactly of the March 20s. And the number 1 bad boy in the VIX option space this week, 427,000 of the AUG 42 halves. Speaking of bad boys, they don't get much badder than Dr. VIX when he's doing his proverbial Russell's Weekly Rundown. Mr. Rhoads.
Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown. Now, Russell's Weekly Rundown.
What's catching your eye on the weekly VIX options front this week, sir?
On Monday, a couple of just ridiculous trades, a lot of ridiculous trades. With VIX up at 26.96, somebody bought, you guys will love this, 200 of the April 9th, 100 calls for 15 cents. I'm going to say that's just like playing the lottery. You can buy those from me, and you don't have to wait until April 9th. I'll just tell you that you lost on the trade. Also, somebody came in with a little bit, I think this was earlier in the day, with VIX almost at 28. They sold 100 of the March 26th 100 calls for 9 cents. Both of those looked like they were entry trades as well. I'm favoring the selling one. How's that for some insight and analysis? On Tuesday, we had VIX hovering around 26.83. Another high strike trade. I think this was an exiting trade. I hope it was an exiting trade. Somebody sold 250 of the March 26th 40 calls for 69 cents, and they bought 500 of the March 26th 50 calls for 38 cents. That's a cost of 7 cents. That would make no sense whatsoever to me as an entry trade. So I'm assuming it's an exit trade. On Wednesday, had somebody come in. A lot of people looking at April 2nd now, we tend to see a lot of trading in the options that expire the first week, like trying to get monthly exposure, I guess. But this one's pretty basic. Looks like somebody just bought 497, nice round number there, of the April 2nd 29 calls, and they paid $1.24 for those. So they're expecting something big between now, but over the course of March. Also had somebody sell 200 of the March 26th 60 calls for 12 cents on Wednesday. Yesterday, very busy day once again. Lots of focusing on the March 26th options. Got somebody that came in and like before the market even opened, sold 1,000 of the March 26th 19 puts when VIX was under pressure at 24.20. And within the week, I guess that counts as under pressure. Lots of call spreads using options in the 30s, selling the 33s and buying the 35s that expire on March 26th. but not taking in a whole lot of credit when you do that. So I don't know if the risk reward makes me particularly happy. Yesterday, there were 2 trades in the weekly complex. One of them was selling the March 26th, the March 26th 100 calls for 3 cents. I still think they'll make I like the risk reward on that trade. And then also we had somebody yesterday looking at the March 26th 26 calls. And it almost looked like these were a spread trade, but they're not. Somebody actually sold 100 of those for $1.46, and it looks like they did that outright. Which the VIX was at 2505. You know, if you do think we're on the backside of the uptrend, then it probably does make some sense. I just worry in this day and age of a 40 handle VIX one morning because something silly happens overnight. You know, somebody calls somebody a name and it escalates into a war. And then finally today, not a whole lot going on today. There's only 4 trades that even pop up, and none of them are spread trades. Probably the most interesting. Looks like somebody sold 100 of the April 23rd. Sold 100 of the 20 puts for $1.55 each. With the market with VIX at 22.63. So there, it's really interesting how heavy the weekly action seems to be every Monday, which makes me think there's probably some systematic stuff going on out there.
You know, where there is stuff going on is in our chat. They're getting a little spicy, Mr. Dr. Bix. They have the temerity, the absolute gall to accuse me of pulling an Andrew by muting myself. I've never been so offended. I might have to just cancel the show right now just in protest. But you know what? I'm a nice guy. I won't do that because the on-demand folks, they don't deserve to be victims of your crimes. You know who I'm talking about there. As we keep on rolling, let's go out here to what's lighting up the tape out here this week. Like I said, listeners, we have the number of the beast on the docket in VIX land, 666,000 contracts on the tape today. The big dog, April 16 puts, 44,000 of those bad boys going up. I went and checked while Russell was talking. They went up pretty much in one big block for about 8 cents. Looks like they might be closing, but it does raise an interesting question. We were talking about the April 15 puts before. Here we are, the big dog, the April 16 puts. You like those bad boys? Are you a buyer for 8 cents? Would you, I don't know if you'd want to sell them for 8 cents. Maybe you do. Or are you just not interested in those? Might be a fun little flashball. Maybe we'll put that out. Have our producers put that out now. See what you folks are feeling. Is that a fun little flyer for Vol going the way of the dodo in April? Or are you just, 16? That's in the rearview mirror. We're not getting anywhere near there again anytime soon. Number 2, 23,000 of the April 18 puts. Those are obviously a little bit spicier, a little bit perhaps more relevant. Number 3, 22,000 of the May 16 puts. So it is quite the put palooza on the docket today, listeners. Number 4, 22K of the April 15 puts. If you don't like the 16s, you obviously don't like the 15s, listeners. And number 5 today, 22,000 of the April 17 puts. So it is indeed an April put palooza with a smattering of May out there today. Let's see. The 18 puts went up for 45 cents today as part of a spread. So maybe you like those a little better, listeners. The 15 puts, obviously, not much, 4 cents. And the May 15 puts traded for 11 cents. I don't have the 16 puts here, but I have the May 15 puts for 11 cents. So interesting stuff. Yesterday, Thursday, a pretty spicy day, 1.07 million on the tape. The big dog, 41, almost 42,000 of the March 25s, followed by number 2, 40,000 of the April 30s. Number 3, 36,000 of the March 26 calls. Interesting selection. Number 4, 35,000 of our old pal, the June 70s. And number 5, 31,000 of the March 35s. I should point out, yesterday was the 2-week anniversary of the VIX Super Stupid that we pointed out on the option block as it went up. It kind of struck us all as interesting. I remember it was myself and the Flow Master at the time just saying, we don't see a lot of that in VIX land, let alone for those strikes and that amount of size that we saw. It was definitely something that caught our attention. Everyone holds on to, is 50 Cent coming back and all that fun. But at the time, I said only half jokingly, I think maybe this VIX Super Stupid might signal the ushering in of a new vol regime. And, of course, that's exactly what happened that super stupid is actually and obviously done fairly well. In fact, our buddy the Flowmaster is tracking it right now. He created a proprietary tracking link that he's going to send me over there so we can track. They have not closed it out, so whatever else they have against it, they do still have the VIX super stupid. If you want to go see the strikes, it was somewhere around 250,000 contracts listed. If you want to go see all the strikes to the far upside in May, go back and check out the option block or indeed vol views from 2 weeks ago. We went deep into it then. Maybe we'll have to have a tracker on the website. VIX super stupid update. Either way, when that goes up, you probably want to sit up and take notice. Wednesday, 1.35 million contracts on the tape. And you know what? You might say that's a lot of paper, and you are right. Not even the spiciest day of the week. I'm just throwing a spoiler out there for you. The big dog on Wednesday, 67,000 of the March 35s, followed by number 2, 57K of the April 24s. Number 3, 44,000 of the March 20 puts. Number 4, 43,000 of the March 70s. So we're right back at, we had the June 70s on Thursday. Wednesday, we had the March 70s. That was part of that vertical. I think we talked about that on the option block. And then number 5, 43,000 of the April 35s. Tuesday, the big bad boy of the week, listeners, 2.37 million contracts going up in VIX that day. That's a lot of paper. You got to go looking back in the VIX archives to find days that really rival or even come close to that. The big dog on a banger day, listeners, 165,000 of the March 25s. I went and looked. They went up straight up 101,000 in a block for $2.72. No spread, no nothing. Now, worth saying there is some OI, obviously, on that strike, so it could potentially have been closing. But, you know, they did it as part of a vertical. The March 2025 vertical, they did it for 101,300 times. They did it for 540 on the 20s and 272 on the 25s. Didn't go up as a spread, but it went up at the exact same time. So if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, listeners, it's probably a duck. That was your big boy on Tuesday, listeners. 165,000 and 117,000 of the 25-20 vertical, respectively. Number 3, 100,000, pretty much exactly of the AUG 50s, 5-0s. Number 4, 94,000 of the March 24s. And number 5, 81,000 of the March 19 puts. Those are interesting. March 19 puts. Might be, if we keep this flat structure and we see this contango kick in and obviously the backwardation go away, I don't know if we'll get to 19, but it could be a coin flip. I know some folks have been piling into those just on that exact roll of the dice. And Monday, listeners, 1.53 million. So it was a banger day pretty much every day this week. 59, almost 60,000 of the April 24s was your big boy, followed by number 2, 48,000 of the March 24s. Number 3, 43,000 of the April 30s. Number 4, 41,000 of the March 20 puts. And number 5, listeners, 37,000 of the March 21 puts. Mr. Meatball, obviously it was a ridiculous week in VIX options. We could probably spend the rest of the show just talking about the Tuesday paper. There was so much of it, but anything in particular really stand out and resonate to you this week, sir? Uh-oh, now the Meatball's pulling an answer.
Oh, no. Hey, I'm here. In the VIX options, there was a ton of activity, Mark. Even today, we've got, a lot of VIX trading going up. You can tell that things were heating up because the volume was just going up and up and up in VIX. Today's the first day that it's actually come down a little bit. Biggest trade. How about you like this, Mark? Selling the April 16 puts twice, buying the 18 puts once for a net debit of 29 cents. Do you like that trade, Mark? I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, I don't love it. We were just talking about the 16 put leg by itself for 8 cents, but you're right. It looks like it went up for like a 1x2. Yeah, I don't really love that.
Listen, I don't know what's going to happen, but if you told me that we were trading, in mid-April, if you told me that we were trading 14 on the VIX, I would not call you crazy. Thursday, biggest trades, kind of interesting. I don't hate this. They bought the 37.70 call spread for 87 cents. That's not terrible. Really nice convexity if we do blow higher. You had some May call buying on Thursday. Wednesday was, I believe, a pretty busy one. Yeah, you had a lot of monetization on Wednesday, which was interesting. So traders were closing winners. So we saw like the March 35.70 go up. The April 20 calls were sold. There was a lot of money. A lot of hedges were monetized. And that's what we've seen over the last couple of days. Was a lot of hedge monetization. Biggest trade this was a doozy. On Tuesday, they sold to close the March 20 calls, bought to open the March 25s. And looks like they collected $2.68 on that. I believe that was a close and roll when I looked at the order flow. Could be just a close, but I recall that was a roll. And then Monday was, for how busy Monday was in the S&P, that was the slow day in the VIX from a large block perspective. Biggest trade was a buyer of the April 22-24 call spread. They did that 25,000 times, and we had a decent-sized buyer of the April 17s. So just all in all across the board, the theme of the week was monetize those hedges.
People have learned. It's like they've been listening to the show, Mr. Meatball, and they realize when you get that VIX upside 9.9 times out of 10, it doesn't hang out too long. You might want to take at least a little bit of those hedges that you paid so much for off the board. Just saying out there, listeners, as we keep on rolling out there to the land of the vol ETPs. I see people talking about ban hammers. I was joking. I obviously wasn't that mad to ban whoever says that in the chat, so don't worry. We're not going to ban anyone, even though they had the temerity to compare me to the rock lobster. How dare they? But let's keep rolling here. Let's go out to the land of the SVIX. 20 even as we kicked off the show, giving up a little bit more of the ghost, down a little over half a point, about 0.6 of a point from where it was this time last week. Let's look really quickly. Let's see how much living did SVIX do during the week. It got down to about an 18, pretty much 18 exactly on Tuesday. It bounced off there. So that was our nadir for the week, and we're hanging out pretty close to the high, right around 20 right now for the week. So only a 2-point range, but if you were looking for a scoop of SVIX, and I guess if you think 18 is it, then you had your opportunity there on Tuesday. 15,000 contracts on the tape today. The ADV is only 10,000. That's up 3,100. So obviously that's going to keep moving up next week, which is a good thing. We all want more liquidity in these products, listeners. We've all been kind of lamenting these markets and SVIX. I think, in fact, Dr. Vix was saying last week that he's kind of washing his hands of SVIX now just because it's so illiquid. Maybe 15, 20,000 contracts a day, if we can get up there again, maybe that will lure him back to the dark side. In terms of action out there today, what's the big dog in SVIX? It's 2,100 of the March 20 calls, listeners. So once people love to just roll the bones on expiration day in the weeklies in SVIX. It's like the favorite vol ETP trade. Everybody loves piling in straight at the money, puts, calls, doesn't matter, just rolling them bones right around expiration. They love it. It's a bit of a sickness that infects the vol space, listeners. And number 2 today, we have the June 22 put. So getting yourself a little bit more duration there. Those have traded 2,000 times today as well. Mr. Rhoads, you said you washed your hands of SVIX on the show last week. Does the prospect of a whopping 15,000 contracts on the tape, does that lure you back to the dark side, sir?
Nah, it doesn't really lure me back. And I did look at, I mentioned that I'm not 100% SVIX, and I'm really trying to find a way to substitute something for it. And it really does come down to the lack of liquidity in the option market. I even looked earlier this week. I was looking, maybe selling some puts to end up owning the fund on the close today. And between the spreads and not being able to maybe buy a farther out of the money put and get a decent premium, I just gave up on it. So that's that's where I'm standing with SVIX. I want to be constantly short volatility. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is I'm going to replicate SVIX just using the futures in my portfolio. That I'm going to continue, and I'll probably trade around that a bit based on where we are contango, backwardation wise. I did. You jumped real quick on me. I got all excited and was running some numbers on VIX option volume. Tuesday was the 16th busiest day on record. It was. This is the one that's going to get you. It was the second busiest month or second busiest day in March of 2025. We had a busier day this month.
You were starting to put up some crazy numbers.
Back on the 4th. Early in the month, Tuesday, March 4th. We put up about 100,000 more contracts, but I think maybe with us up in the upper 20s, et cetera, just the price action makes us pay a bit more attention to what's going on trading wise. And again, I know I'm deviating away from the ETPs, but it's really interesting as Mark Sebastian was talking about, the action through the week, and when the monetization started happening. If you pull up a intraday weekly chart of VVIX, you can basically see that. Yeah, you can. It's like, and it looks like everybody started monetizing on Wednesday, and you basically can see VVIX do nothing but. It looks like that 1-day VIX in the opposite direction, where it just trends down for the whole day as opposed to trending up for the whole day.
Mr. Rhoads, they've also suggested you might have Lyme disease, so I don't know. They're just throwing out all sorts of ailments for you. I think bubonic plague will be up next, sir. So maybe hit your local physician after this show. SVIX,
I'm hitting the couch.
Yeah, that'll probably help too. If you're wondering what the top dog position in SVIX is right now, such as it is, listeners, it's 4,300 of the 21.5 calls going out today. If past is prologue, they may have overwritten those against some of their underlying, in which case they're probably going to keep their money on those. But again, we'll see. This thing could whipsaw like crazy again today. UVIX going out there today right now. It's kind of funny. You don't see UVIX pretty much unchanged on the week very often, but it kind of just ticks. It pretty much is right around a 41 as we're coming into the start of this segment. That puts it kind of literally unched on the week. You don't see UVIX unchanged very often, particularly when we had a spicy week. We got as high as 53.32 this week in UVIX, listeners. So if you were out there post reverse split and you were saying, man, I like it at a 30.35, and then it started eroding and you felt like you missed it, there you go. 53 handle. They reset the gun. They put more bullets in the chamber for you. Today, looking spicy as well. 12,000 contracts on the tape. That's against an ADV of 18,000. That in and of itself is ticking back up. So that's also good. We all want water in the pool when we dive in. So the more liquidity we're seeing out here, the better. The big dog out there in UVIX, this looks like one of these pre-reverse split positions. It's about 5,800 of the 2026 Jan 1 puts. So read into those what you like. And then number 2, we have the April 30 puts if you want a quote-unquote real position. So those could still come into play. We shall see. UVIX is known to go the way of the dodo pretty hard. In terms of action, what's lighting it up out there today? This is a bit of a funky one. We had to go check to make sure this was correct. And it is indeed the case. The March 79s. That's the big dog out there today. 1,100 of these bad boys trading for 43 cents. Mr. Meatball, first question. Why are you buying so many March 79s in UVIX, sir, for 43 cents? That seems like a wild trade. Seemingly unlike you. And then B, we also, what's catching your eye in SVIX land, sir, as you've been out there navigating a newsletter in these troubled waters, sir?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, over the last 2 weeks, VIX has been backward. That is going to play against how that's going to play against everything, right? That's going to play against being short UVIX, being long SVIX. However, you're still going to move with volatility. So with volatility coming back down, UVIX is getting smoked, and you see some pretty decent pain there. What strike were they buying, Mark?
They were buying the March 79s.
The March 79 calls?
Yes, in
1,100 of them going up.
1,100 of them went up today.
I
There's
mean,
also the
I like
41.
selling those against a long somewhere.
Yeah,
that would be my trade.
That's not a bad trade at all. I agree with you there.
You know, you're getting like what did you say, 29 cents for those?
No, it was 43 cents, I believe.
Oh my. Yeah, I mean, you're still getting a quarter for them, and the 55s are only, 70, call it 90 cents. You can put on the 55.79 call spread for, 60 cents. That's 65 cents. That's got really nice risk reward, really good convexity if vol does blow higher. I like that. Would be my trade.
Yeah, those 79s traded as low as 23 cents and as high as 47 cents this morning. That was the sale of the week out there in UVIX up. Now these are March listeners, so you're only getting a week out of these bad boys, but intriguing nonetheless. Are you a buyer, listeners, of the March 79s at 43 cents? Dr. Hantavirus, sir, anything catching your eye in UVIX land this week?
No. I'm gonna. It's give me a real good chance, real good price to buy it for this weekend, right? I can continue to knock that thing out, and I've continued to buy it on Fridays and hold it through Mondays, and I've been very fortunate with beginning of the week volatility. And again, I've tried. I am running the numbers, and this is one of those things that takes a while to gather the data on. But I'm taking a look at as opposed to buying UVIX, maybe buying like a 90 delta VX, and there we go, VXX. You're shocked I'm mentioning it. Buying a 90 delta VXX call that expires the following Friday, and then maybe selling a 20 delta one. With the hope that I can get out of that okay on the long option side, and then flip it into a bear spread on Monday mornings. So that's something that I'm taking a look at.
All right, let's get out to, I know a lot of you like to play in UVXY at a 25 even right now. It puts it up a quarter on the week. The high was nearly 30 this week, 29.86 out there in UVXY land this week. So it did a lot of living. It's putting up some numbers again today. As you would expect, the ADV is nearly 150,000 contracts a day. 144 to be precise, up 15,000 from this time last week. Today so far, 128,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contracts out there today are the March 30s expiring today. So on the 14th, 10, almost 11,000 of those bad boys going up, followed by number 2, 10,000 as well of the March 26s. So maybe a little bit of vertical action, listeners. 2630 expiring today, in which case we're at 25. We need the saw end of the whipsaw to kick in for that vertical to kick in. But we've seen crazier things. The big position right now in UVXY, listeners, 16,000 of the 30 calls expiring today. So if you were long those bad boys, you had more opportunities earlier this week to get the heck out of Dodge than obviously you do today. And the product that Mr. Rhoads usually doesn't like to talk about, but he just invoked, so we are legally allowed to talk about it now. It is good old VXX at a 53.30 as we're coming into this segment. So that puts it up about 0.8 of a point from where it was this time last week. It's not quite a full point. Obviously, it got much higher. It got to nearly a 60 earlier this week, 59.82. In terms of paper, it's starting to put up a little bit of flow out there today as well. 53,000 contracts on the tape in VXX. So go figure. You just need a little bit of a vol pop, and then coming back down the other side, and all of a sudden VXX can put up some numbers out here, listeners. In terms of size positions, the big dog in VXX right now are the 46 puts expiring today. So hope springs eternal, but I don't know if it's going to spring that eternal to the downside, listeners, unless you really see vol fall out of bed the second half of the day, listeners. Those puts, if past is prologue, they're probably long them, and they're probably going to go home sad. In terms of the big dog out there today, we got about 3,500 of the 49 puts expiring next week. Those are interesting. I'll have to go see what they traded those for. Mr. Meatball, sir, anything catching your eye? I know you're not a big UVXY guy, but I know you like yourself a little bit of VXX, and it had some action this week. Anything catching your eye out there this week, sir?
Kind of the same story as all the other names. Although I do like that the volume's increasing. So looks like this thing's a legitimate product again. It's doing 5 million shares. Average daily volume's up to 35,000 contracts. Today you're doing 53. So, I think VXX and UVIX are kind of stealing UVXY's thunder. Volume is down in UVXY and increasing in UVIX and VXX. Option volume also kind of weakening in UVXY.
Mr. Meatball, the 49 puts expiring next week in VXX traded for about 35 cents today, a boatload of times. Are you down for that as a flyer, or is that a bit of a bridge too far for you?
No, I don't hate that. We could easily, it's down $3 today. We get a 17 VIX by Friday. The VXX is going to be $42.
It is an intriguing flyer, I would say. Just putting it out there, listeners. It traded prices around 35 cents, about 3,500 times. Probably going to be a little bit of a different price out there right now. But again, interesting. Got to kick into gear by the second half of next week. But we've seen crazier things happen. Speaking of crazy things, let's get out really quickly to some of you folks have on the brain a little bit of the old volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options. or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, let's check in really quickly on what you folks have on the brain before we get to the crystal ball. We did put in earlier in the show, listeners, that 40,000 lot of the April 16 puts trading for 8 cents this morning. We talked about it by itself and also as part of that 1x2, about 20,000 by 40,000. They traded by themselves for 8 cents. We said, at that price, are you intrigued? Are you a buyer? Are you a seller? Or you just don't care? Interestingly enough, nobody doesn't care. Everybody cares. And 75% of you want to buy those bad boys. So yeah, I could certainly see that. There's a lot of time between now and April expiration. I don't want to sell them for 8 cents, as we said earlier, either as part of that 1x2 or outright. I don't love it. So I guess if you want a relatively cheap flyer, 16, I mean, if we keep this level of vol we're at right now, it's probably going to be hard to tickle a 16, but you never know. You got some duration working for you. Our actual question of the week, actually, before I get there really quickly and pay off last week's question where we asked you folks something similar. We asked you about, it was the March 19 puts expiring next week for 55 cents. They traded 30,000 times last week. We asked you that price. Do you like them as a buyer? You want rather sell them, or you're not interested? 55.6% of you wanted to buy those bad boys. That was an unfortunate trade, of course, because it looked pretty rough this week. On the flip side, if you wanted 19 puts, I talked about it earlier in the show, you can get all you wanted for much lower price. If that does intrigue you, that's going to be kind of maybe a photo finish on those, but it could be interesting. 29.6% saying they're not interested. 14.8% wanted to sell them. Obviously, in hindsight, that turned out to be the right trade. And we heard a lot of you talking about BTFD. Is BTFD dead? Well, we're bouncing pretty hard today, so maybe the answer to that is no. But we put it out to you folks to say, hey, is buy the freaking dip, is that dead, yes or no? And, well, tell you what, I'll go around the horn. Mr. Rhoads, I'll start with you. Do you think BTFD is dead? A, and then B, what do you think our audience is up to? And C, inspired by our hot debate with the Flowmaster yesterday on the option block, who is your favorite Spice Girl, sir? All three. We need all three.
Well, I know one of them.
You know one of the Spice Girls?
Yeah, I'm not really
sporty.
No, it's not sporty. It's a funny story, but yeah, I've met one of them. It's the one everybody would want to meet as well. But if I talk about it, then I never get an opportunity to go to one of the fashion weeks and see them again. And
you're a posh man.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. So, but next time I see you in person, I'll explain that. So I am very much and I was a Posh Spice fan, with the very first video. She's always been by far my favorite. And now what is BTFD? What was the first question?
Buy the freaking dip. Is it dead? Yes or no? Or you're out, you're in cash. And what do you think our audience is voting for?
I'm in cash. As much as I overshare on my personal stuff. But I'm short futures, but my IRA is 95% cash. I'm just waiting. As soon as S&P goes under 5,000, I'm all in. So I know that didn't answer your questions at all, but that's where I'm at. Where do I think the audience is in? I think they've abandoned. Am I right?
Yeah. Well, Mr. Meatball, same questions for you. Is BTFD dead? Yes, no, or you're in cash? B, which way is our audience leaning? And C, just for fun, do you also personally know a Spice Girl, sir?
Don't know a Spice Girl, at all. Unfortunately,
can you name? Well, I couldn't name one.
Oregano spice, and then you got basil spice.
Yes,
you got pepper spice and salt spice.
Paprika spice. You forgot about paprika spice.
Yeah, and paprika spice. That's the redhead. I think a lot of people are in cash. I don't think by.
Aha! See, we did
I don't
the
think
family-friendly version.
Is dead. I think that it's going to take people a little bit to jump in on this, though, right? One rally is not going to make people feel better, but we come in up on Monday. You're going to get some FOMO jumping in.
Yes, interesting. As the meatball gets us kicked off of the clean tab.
You don't want to bleep that.
Our editors will have to do some bleeping work. Let's see right now, listeners. What are you feeling out here in our bleeping poll? Is BTFD dead? It's been contentious. 41.7% say no, you're buying more right now. 37.5% saying yes, this is dead. And 20.8% pulling the Russell Rhoads trade, saying they are sitting on the sidelines in cash, which in and of itself, you would think, listeners, is effectively a vote for waiting to buy the dip, but at a much lower level, like the Rock, or excuse me, the Meatball, or I should say Dr. Hantavirus was saying. By the way, right now, our Spice Girls poll is about to end, and we have a tie between Baby and Posh for people's favorite Spice Girls. So if you want to make your name heard, you want your favorite Spice Girl to win, you've got mere minutes left, mere seconds. Get over there, Scary Spice, and then Ginger/Sporty, because we couldn't fit them all in 4, obvious listeners, are tied with 10% each. So looks like Russell's personal friend will tie for number 1. Will we all tie in the crystal ball? I guess it's time to find out, listeners.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, everybody, welcome to the crystal ball. And here we go. We're always uncovering new secrets about the people on our shows, including the fact that Dr. VIX, a.k.a. Dr. Hantavirus, a close personal friend of the fashionista of the Spice Girls out there. Listen, do you have a favorite Spice Girl? If you do, get it in our poll before it ends any second now. What's ending right now is the show. VIX coming into the end of the show right now, listeners. Everything hanging out pretty close to where we were to start the show. Everything's pretty much about the same percentages on the index side. And VIX cash at exactly 22.51 to wind down the show. Let's see, last week it was myself, it was Dr. Hantavirus, a.k.a. Dr. Posh Spice, and the greasiest of meatballs. He was feeling a 30 handle, which we got close to this week, but no cigar. Mr. Rhoads was feeling a 1947. I was a nice Goldilocks at 22.64, which, oh, man.
So close.
Can we delay this segment for a few?
Don't you should get, because vol is higher, shouldn't there be a sliding scale when the VIX is in the 20s because it moves around more?
That's what people have always asked us. They said, hey, should you move the goalposts? And I've always resisted because I said, you know what, 22.55 as we're talking right now. There we go, baby. I am now within 0.09. So I will take that crystal ball as a victory. And you know what, Mr. Meatball, that just makes the victory that much more impressive when you get it, right? Because
absolutely.
it is
brilliant.
that much more difficult.
I don't know. Mark, your VIX predictions, the way you've got it down to a science is something that to behold.
I should be managing a book in my spare time, sir.
You
Who says I'm not?
Yeah, you should get on the phone with Noel and say, Noel, you start hosting the show. I'm going to go trade for you because I'm so good.
That would be an interesting development for all involved, I think. But including our listeners, they might be like, "What's going on with the show?" But listeners, a lot of fun. So, crystal ball. What do we? I don't want to look in the chat yet because I don't want people to poison me. So I am the winner. So I will choose to go last this week just for fun. So, Mr. Rhoads, you were the next closest. You get to go first, sir. What are you feeling for this time next week from a vol perspective?
Repeat my guess. And I think we'll probably be a tad under 20, so I'll go with 1947 again.
1940. You love that year.
And I do want to make a comment about how you run this. Have you seen the movie The Dictator when he's running track? And he
the old Charlie
shoots
Chan
the
movie?
Competitors. I think you mess around and you speak slowly and you speak fast, and then you're like, okay, now's the time. So I know what you're doing over there. I know what you're doing.
I had to get within 0.1. I got to 0.09. I'll take it, sir. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. Don't hate me because I'm within 0.1 and you're 3.5, 4.5, 5.5 points away. Just bottle your hatred for someone else. All right, Mr. Meatball, sir, you were at a 30 handle last week. Are you still feeling that spice this week, sir?
No, let's go the other way. Let's say we get a big, huge collapse, and I'm going to go 1771.
1771. That means he's buying VIX 75 calls as we speak, listeners, because he's
absolutely
usually fading his book here on the show. All right, last I shall go, but I will not be least in terms of predictions. 2264 served me pretty well last week. I'm going to say we are still managing to hang north of a 20 handle, but ever so barely next week. I'm going to say 2037. There you go, listeners. There's your market. Let's look really quickly. Well, we got 1985s in the chat. We've got 20 3/4 from the Queen. Oh, 20 1/4 from Mr. Unlimited. So he's kind of carping me, even though he was first. And all sorts of other fun. Get your predictions in now, listeners. And you, too, can win fabulous prizes. All right, that is going to do it for us on Vol Views this week. Mr. Meatball, sir, I'm glad you're not suffering from the Hantavirus. If folks want to reach out to you and talk some vol, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, go to optionpit.com. I'm doing it, and follow our YouTube page. I'm putting out a daily video that I think is pretty good. So find us on YouTube at OptionPit or OptionPit on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at OptionPit. Basically, use the word OptionPit, and you'll find us.
Check out his Option Pit After Dark videos, listeners. Good stuff. I think you have to be a member for those, but that's his equivalent of their OnlyFans over there at Option Pit. So check them out. OptionPit.com to begin your journey, as well as over there on the old tubes. And Mr. Dr. Hantavirus, I'm guessing you're not going to be on the tubes this week because you're not feeling well. But in the meantime, where should folks go if they want to check out your Substack and all that goodness?
Sure, Substack's just my name and Russell Rhoads on Twitter as well. The one that talks about the markets, not the one that talks about weather. I know you're not looking at the chat, but somebody just said that the weekly rundown is going to start being a segment of someone famous that I know. Maybe we'll do I've had all these weird encounters. Maybe we'll do a prize if somebody can guess which one sometime or something like that. So there.
You have a battle between Posh Spice and the Bitcoin twins. What are their names again?
The
Winklevoss.
I did that road show with the Winklevoss twins. I've never really mentally recovered from what I look like as a human being since then.
Well, there you go.
And they're Olympians, for God's sakes.
If you want to help him recover, check out his Substack.
Make me feel good about myself.
As he is nursing himself. Oh, yeah, Jerry the King, they're pointing out, too, in our chat.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about
everybody in Memphis knew Jerry Lawler one way or another.
And of course, your dad, Dusty Rhoads, another famous person out there.
He was not a wrestler. Trust me, my dad is about 5'6". He was not a wrestler. So,
Man, your dad is Dusty Rhoads?
not the American Dream.
That's the American Dream?
No, not the American Dream. So,
Oh, okay.
All right, listeners, that is going to do it for us and our celebrity sighting edition of Vol Views. If you're on the on-demand side, that will conclude your broadcast week with us. I thank you for joining us during this very tumultuous week. If you're hanging out in the Pro, if you're listening after the fact on our Pro podcast feed, I will be back momentarily to talk all the weird, the wild, the madness. There's a lot of trades going up this week, listeners, over there on Options Oddities. If you want to check it out for yourselves, only one place to go, the optionsinsider.com/pro. I will be back in the Chi-Town studio on Monday for the option block all the way through to next Friday, another episode. Volatility Views. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.